last week in Parashat Balak, we see that Balak had a very seemingly ambitious plan to bring Bilam and to curse Klal Yisrael. It's quite clear what his method of thinking was. Since he saw that the whole Hatzlocha of Klal Yisrael is beyond anything natural, it's very obvious that the Hatzlocha is Ruchni, spiritual. So he thought he'd bring along Bilam, who, as Hazal say, that although in Klal Yisrael there was never going to be someone on the prophetic level as Moshe Rabbeinu, by the Goyim there would be, and that was Bilam HaRasha. Having someone on the level of Moshe who also had spiritual powers, he hoped he could do something for him through his klolas. We see very clearly from all the nevuahs of Bilam, which were his curses, which Hashem turned into broches, we see very clearly what the message is. Right from the very beginning. Ki am levadad yishkon, u'bagoyim lo yithashav. Hashem is telling him, it won't work this time. Your koiches go all the way up spiritually to the Shivim Sarim. When Hashem divided up the world, as it says, the end of Bereshis, at the time of the Dora Plaga, He divided up the world to 70 nations. He appointed for each nation a Sar, a Mazal, Elyon, a Shamayim. The Sarim, all these different nations, are ruled over by their Sarim, by their particular Mazal. The Koyach of Kishuf of Bilam could go all the way up to the Sarim. He could manipulate them, change the order, cause one to be fighting with another, one to conquer another. That he could do very well. But he didn't realize that the Kesher of Klal Yisrael is beyond all of that. We have a direct line with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ki am levadad yishkon, u'bagoyim lo yithashav. The whole, if you look through the whole parasha, all his four nevuahs are built around this nekuda of that Hashem was telling him, there's no way you can harm Klal Yisrael. I don't change my mind. I'm not a human being. I've already decided. I want to bless them. It won't work. So really, here we have the Yesoides of Torah's Israel. Ki am levadad yishkon. We have a personal correct connection with Borei Olam. Yisrael lemala min hamazal. Of course, as Hazal say, hakol tolui b'mazal, afilu sefer Torah shebeheichal. But Yisrael lemala min hamazal. How could it be? As long as we develop and strengthen our personal connection with Hashem, we have a private hanhoga directly from Hashem, not through all the sarim, not through all the mazalot. We have a direct connection with Hashem. But Chas Shalom, if a person lives a life of mikrehu, he thinks that what happens is just coincidence. He doesn't see the hand of Hashem involved in every single thing that takes place in the world. If a person chooses that way of life, then he does fall under the ruling of mazal. Of course, everything has a mazal. But we have a way of being disconnected from the mazalot and having a private, special connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the Yesoides of Torah's Israel. And that's really the avodah of every Jew, that we have to work on this connection with Hashem. To come closer to Hashem, to understand His Torah, to keep His mitzvahs, to work on our midas, as much as we can do to develop this connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The more we develop the personal connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the less we are connected with all the Anhoga of the Mazoles, and the more we have a spiritual life, a life of Kedusha and Tahara. We know the Torah Kedusha, which we received on Mount Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu received Torah Shebechsav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. The written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah developed further during the time of the prophets. We have Nevi'im, we have Ksuvim. And finally, although the Torah Sheba'al Peh was handed down verbally from generation to generation, finally it was written. Rabbi wrote the Mishnayos, Rabbi Yochanan wrote the Talmud Yerushalmi, and later on Rabbeinu and Rabbi Ashi wrote the Talmud Babli. Other Tanoim, Amoraim, they wrote the Medrashim, the Toseftas, the Sifri, Safra, all the holy Sforim that we have, which within them the Torah Sheba'al Peh is explained, is expounded. Part of the Torah Sheba'al Peh is also Sisrei Torah. The Torah has as well the secrets of the Torah. And it's part of the Torah HaKadoshah. However, first of all, just like the Torah Sheba'al Peh in general was not meant ever to be written down. However, when Rabbeinu HaKadosh saw the developing situations in the world, that there was a chashash, there was a chance that, God forbid, Torah would be forgotten, he started writing. He learned from the pasuk, Et la'asot laHashem heferu toratecha. It's a time to do for Hashem. So we have to transgress the words of Torah. Although we were forbidden to write the oral Torah, now we have to write it. And on that heter they wrote, as we said, all the Torah Sheba'al Peh. Still, there was not a similar heter to write down Sisrei Torah. The secrets of the Torah, although of course again there was a chashash that they would be forgotten, but the heter to write them down was much less. The reason being that although everyone must learn Torah, we cannot do without it, as it says, Lo buri rehet velo am haaretz hasid. You can't keep mitzvahs if you don't know the dinim of Torah. And of course, beyond just knowing Torah la halacha, there's the din of vehagisa bo yimam v'layla. You have to learn Torah day and night. But Sisrei Torah was never anything which was given over to the public in a general way. The Zohar says, Beferush, lav kol mocha u'mocha savil da. Not every mind is cut out to understand Sisrei Torah. Even in the time of Chazal, the Soides HaTorah were taught only to very exclusive groups of Gdolei Israel who had reached that level that they were suitable to learn Torah. We have a Mishnah in Maseches Hagiga, Perek Beis, Ein Doirshim b'Maaseh Merkava b'Yachid, etc. The Mishnah puts down halachas, and all the halachas of the Torah embedded in the Mishnah are nitzchiyas. These halachas will never change, cannot ever change. Any halacha which is mefurush in Mishnah and Gemara and embedded in the Shulchan Aruch, these are all funitzios, are forever. And the Mishnah clearly says what are the conditions. The Gemara discusses who can learn, who are the people, what type of a level that you need for a person to be able to learn the secrets of Torah, the Chochmas HaKabala. And according to the criteria we see explained in the Mishnah, it's only a very, very exclusive group of Gdolei Torah, Gdolei Israel, not only Gdolim in the knowledge of Torah, Torah Sanigle, but also people who are perfect in their Dukduka mitzvahs, Bnei Aliyah, Bale Midas Toives, people who have worked on their Midas to perfect their character traits. Someone who is really very little connected in worldly matters and very, very strongly connected spiritually to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Torah, to mitzvahs only. Such a person could be the type of person who could learn Sisrei Torah. As we said, these dinim are part of our Mishnah, Gemara, Shulchan Aruch. So it's not something that is going to change over time. So even Reb Shimon Bar Yochai gave reshus to his Talmid Rabbi Abba to write the secrets of the Torah that he had taught him in the Sefer HaZohar HaKodesh. The Arizal explains, and it says so in the Zohar, that the reason that he chose Rabbi Abba, first of all, the reason why Reb Shimon Bar Yochai himself was the greatest ever general teacher of the Chochmas Kabbalah, was that he had a special talent to know how to speak in a code language in such a way that only his immediate group, who he had revealed to them the secrets, how to crack that code and know what he meant when he used certain words, would understand what he's saying. And Rabbi Abba knew to write down the secrets of the Zohar in code language, in a way that if anyone who would open up these books, who was never taught the secrets of that code, he would everything which is written in these books really do not make sense if they're taken literally. They have to be understood according to the secret code which went from mouth to ear, from one great teacher to a great Talmid. Yichidei Segula, one in a generation, one in a door, as it was handed down through Klal Israel throughout the generations. In other words, the Zohar, if we know how it is to learn a Daf Gemara. We are smashing our brains over it day and night in yeshiva. We know till we can read a Gemara correctly, till we know how to punctuate it, just that our kriya will be correct, till we can understand the simple meaning that Rashi puts in, understand then the Mahalach of Tosfos, the Rambam, other Rishonim. We could spend really just, if we want to understand in depth a Daf Gemara, it could take years maybe to understand it fully, with all the Rishonim and the Achronim, to be able to develop that Gemara all the way down to the Halacha. And the Gemara was never meant to be a hidden sefer. Hazal, when they wrote down the Gemara, they didn't hide anything. Everything was meant to be exactly as they said, taken literally and understood. Probably they wrote in the most clear Lashon that they could. And even so, it's so difficult. How much more so when we're speaking about the secrets of the Torah, which were written in a code language, number one. Secondly, everything was written in these forum, written Bekitzur Nimratz. As Rabbi Chaim Vital says in his forum, he is the Talmid of the Arizal, the greatest ever author of the writings of the Arizal in Kabbalah. He wrote, I've written my book in such a way, first of all, he says, I only wrote a few Hakdamas that I was allowed to. We know his forum, it would take a lifetime for a Gadol B'Yisrael to learn. A Gadol B'Yisrael would need a lifetime, and they don't mean a Gadol in this generation, I mean even 250, 300 years ago. It would take a lifetime to be able to learn in depth all his writings. He said, and he learned with the Arizal 1 year and 10 months. The whole connection was 1 year and 10 months. That was all the time he had to learn from the Arizal. And what he wrote in his 8 gates of Kabbalah, the Shmoina Sha'arim they're called, would take a lifetime for Gadol B'Yisrael to learn. And who knows how many Yichidim from those Gedolim could really get to the full depth of that wisdom. He goes on to say, a lot of what I received, I was never allowed to transmit in writing. And even what I wrote in a way that was Megale Tefach Umchase Alpaim Amma. If we have any mathematicians here, maybe they can calculate to me just exactly how much he revealed and how much he's covering in each word that he wrote. He's Megale Tefach and Mechase Alpaim Amma. You could almost say that more than we expect to be reading the words and understanding what's written, we have to know what's under the words. And maybe we have to know the white of the page surrounding the words. It's so full of content in depth and hidden that it's almost impossible to understand. besides the fact it was written in code language, we know everything in the Gemara is to do with our physical world. If the Gemara says, any Mishnah you take, shor, bor, mave, we know what that is. An ox, we know what that is. A boar, we know what that is. We have no problem to understand and to relate to these concepts. Aisha niknet be shloisha drochim, kesef, we know what that is. Mishtar, we know. These are all things we see and feel and aware of in our physical world. But the Chochmas of Kabbalah is not speaking about anything physical. It's not even speaking about the human soul. It's speaking about spiritual worlds which the Creator created billions and billions of light years above anything of all the universe. If today modern science, with all their improved technology and the most powerful telescopes, have no way to see the end of the universe is literally tachtis oila ma'asiyah, is the lowest physical part of the lowest world that Hashem created. The Pasuk says in Shira Shirim, va'alamot en mispar. The Zohar says, al tikri va'alamot ela va'olamot en mispar. He created worlds beyond this, level after level, spiritual and more spiritual and more spiritual. So when we're speaking about what Chochmas Kabbalah is intended to talk about, we're speaking the concepts of the Creator Himself, how He created the world, what's the purpose of creation, and everything is related to the higher worlds which are completely spiritual. The reason it's called Soidis HaTorah, because the very concepts you're speaking about are secrets. They're not something visible, they're not something that can be seen, they're not something to be touched and felt and heard. They're completely abstract and spiritual in such a way that it's impossible for a person to relate to them. We have no capability to talk about them. Just like the Rambam writes in the beginning, in the Yesodei HaTorah, our own Torah K'dosha, Torah Shebeksav, it says, it uses many metaphors whenever it speaks about Hashem. It says, Yad Hashem, Enei Hashem, Vayerach Hashem, Vaydaber Hashem, Va'amdu Raglav Bayom Hahu. We know that Hashem en lo dmut, ve'en lo tzura. He's not physical, He doesn't have eyes and ears and hands. All these things are all human concepts which exist only in this world and certainly not in the higher spiritual worlds, and how much more so that Borei Olam Himself is beyond anything physical. That's Me'ikra Amunah. But even so, the Sifrei Kabbalah used, just like the Torah used, all forms of physical description, relating them to the higher worlds, the spiritual world, and to Hashem also. Now, anyone who is superficial in his learning, anyone who doesn't have a very, very pure neshama, that he worked for years and years to purify his neshama, when he's going to learn those concepts, he's going to be over in a very big issa called hakshama. When you learn these spiritual matters, you're not allowed to, although you're using the normal talk, we could say Yad Hashem, Oznei Hashem, Enei Hashem, we could say all these things, but it doesn't mean anything physical. A person who's not very spiritual, automatically when he uses these words, in his mind, everything that he reads will be understood in the physical sense, and that's a very great sin. A person must be on such a high level spiritually that he uses the concepts in a completely, just as a mashal, through them to get to the nimshal of the Sodei HaTorah, to the secrets of the Torah, without in any way linking the spiritual concept with the physical tziyur, the physical dmus, which comes into his mind when he says one of these words which relate to our physical world. That's why Rab Chaim Vital, in the beginning of his book Eitz Chaim, made a whole list of conditions, Sur Merava Asetov, where he makes a big oath. He swears in the name of Hashem that anyone who wants to learn his Sefer has to keep these anhogas, Sur Merava Asetov, which are very much b'derech Hasidus. They demand a lot of a person to be on a very, very high spiritual level, very much medactic on his kiyum mitzvahs and very much medactic on his tikkun amidas. After, as he says very clearly, only after that a person has learned kol Torah kula. As the Rambam wrote, Al yita'el adam bepardes ad shemela kriso bebasar ve'yain. You don't walk around in the garden of Sisrei Torah, of the secrets of Torah, till you fill yourself with meat and wine, meaning lachma shel Torah, yena shel Torah. You've been yageh and shas and poiskim. You've learned Torah be'iyun. Plus, you've brought yourself to that spiritual level that could allow you, maybe, as we'll speak a bit later, to have any connection with this type of learning. So now we can understand the words of Zohar, Lav kol mucha u'mucha savil da. The Gdolei Israel throughout the generations, Rabbi Tzaddik Cohen writes about this. He says the mitzvah of learning Sisrei Torah, although the Arizal says that to be mekayim mitzvahs Talmud Torah b'shleimus, you have to learn Torah in all its chalokim, pshat, remes, drus, sod, but still you're not mechuyev on the chelek of the sod till you've reached that level that you are appropriate to learn it. But if you're not on that level, you've done enough. V'tikabel schar tov al aprisha yoiser ma'al adrisha. You'll be rewarded from keeping away from it more than if you dabble with it and play around with it. It's playing with fire. As Reb Chaim Vital said, there's no guarantees. People who foolishly trample into the garden like an elephant taking a stroll in a beautiful king's garden, he's going to mess up the garden, he's going to smash all the trees and all the beautiful lawns. That's how it could be. It's very dangerous. That Hashem appointed angels to guard His Torah HaKadoshah, the secrets of His Torah, from people who are not the right people to learn. It is true that the Zohar and the great Mekubalim wrote that the end of days, before the coming of Mashiach, that the Chochmas of Kabala will become more revealed. But it certainly didn't mean that people on a low level of learning Torah, of keeping mitzvahs, are allowed to dabble in these spiritual studies. That's very clear. It would never change. It's a Mishnah, as we said. It's a halacha. It cannot change. However, my interpretation of that is that those who are on the right level to learn, they will have tremendous siyata d'shmaya in their learning. And that is written in many Sfarim, especially the Leshem, Rabbi Yoshev's grandfather, the famous Kohen, who wrote many wonderful books in Kabbalah. He lived about 80, 90 years ago. He writes very clearly that there's tremendous siyata d'shmaya for the Gdolei Israel who are going to learn Kabbalah, B'kedusha Ptara, in the end of days, to understand many, many inyonim which were hidden before. And we don't question that, meaning, how could it be that the Rishonim maybe it was more difficult for them to learn, and the Achronim it's easier for them to learn. Hashem runs the world, He gives the siyata d'shmaya in the right way. Just as we have no explanation why in the last 30 years there's been such an upheaval in the world of Baalei Tshuva. That's also a very, very special occurrence, that people from all over the world have a oirodus for tshuva, which is almost not feasible b'seichel to understand how this is happening. And we know that Hashem runs the world, and He's planting in people's heart the interest to look for the emes and to come back to Torah, and not only to come back, but to study Torah and become Talmidei Chachomim. As we see, many Baalei Tshuvas have attained very nice levels of Torah and Avodah. This is also something which is beyond our comprehension if we just think about it very simply. It's also a very unbelievable thing which is taking place. However, I understand this to mean, as we see today, throughout the last 300, maybe even 400 years ago, all the Gdolei Israel based their learning of Torah, their teaching of Torah, the halacha, Musa and Hashkafa on the secrets of the Zohar and the Kisvei Arizal. For example, if you open up, you want to learn Shulchan Aruch, everyone knows the first parish you have to look at, the Magen Avram. The Magen Avram didn't miss once to quote Isa B'Ksovim. He quotes in every case that the Arizal has an opinion in halacha, he quotes it in the Magen Avram. And from the Magen Avram, there are many other poskim who add on more and bring the opinions. Bichlal, the Gdolei poskim by the Sfaradim, speaking already from 450 years ago till today, they even rely the halacha on the Dasa Arizal. Most of the minhagim in tefillah, in kiyum mitzvahs, the Sfaradim do al pi Kabalist and Arizal. Even when the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, differs with the Arizal, we go always according to the opinion of the Arizal and not according to the Shulchan Aruch. Even in the most chumrah, where most machmer concerning Sofik brochas, we know that any opinion in halacha, if there's a Sofik, we don't say a brocha. Sofik brochas lehakel. If the Arizal's opinion is to say a brocha, even if the Shulchan Aruch is against it, we say the brocha like the Arizal without any chashash. The biggest proof of that is Hanoten Laya'ef Koach. In the Shulchan Aruch, Maran says, Ein levarech ota, I brocha levatola. And all the kehilas without any yotzim in a klal, by the Ashkenazim it's bichlal, the minhag to say it. By the Sfaradim was never the minhag. And because of the Arizal, take it on, even though it's a Sofik broches. So, what do we see here? We see here that the Kabbalah has become part of the Shulchan Aruch. It's embedded in our kiyum mitzvahs. There's not a single mitzvah that we can do. In any siddur you take up, you have the concepts of the Mikubalim included in the halachas, which all of Klal Yisrael keep. Beyond that, all the Chassidish Sfarim, all the Gdolei Chassidus, everything they write is based on the Zohar Kodesh and the Kisvei Ari. The Ramchal, I can say, he didn't even write one word in his life which is not based on Kisvei Ari and Zohar Kodesh. Not one word. Every one of his books, he can write in such a way you think, wow, how clever he is. There's not one word which is not based on the Zohar and the Kisvei Ari. Just like you could have a biur grow on the Shulchan Aruch, where he would tell you each part of a saif in a Shulchan Aruch, where it comes from which Rishon, according to which Havana, in which Daf in the Gemara. You could make a Mekoiris to the Kisvei Ramchal, and every single word you could write in the margin exactly from which sugya is coming from in the Kisvei Ari or the Zohar Kodesh. And we know that the words of the Ramchal, everyone learns the Mesilas Yesharim, the Derech Hashem, and some of his other deeper books. They're part and parcel of Klal Yisrael. And then you have all the Gdolei, Talmidi HaGro, the Gro himself. The Gro wrote more in Kabbalah than he wrote in Nigle. If you put in the scales, all that he wrote in Nigle against what he wrote in Kabbalah, way outweighs what he wrote in Kabbalah. Much more in Kabbalah. And his Talmidim, you see the Nefesh HaChaim from Chaim Velozhin, and all the Gdolei HaMusa. People read the Musa of the Gdolei Musa, whether it's Rabbi Yisrael Salanta or others, and there won't be one quotation from the Zohar or from Kisvei Ari. These were always hidden. But everything, someone who knows, every single word they say is based on the Havana of the Mikubalim. So we see that what Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says, that in the time of Mashiach, the words of the Zohar and the Kabbalah will be spread out in the whole of Klal Yisrael, has been mikuyim, whether it's lahalocha, for more by the Sfaradim, maybe a little less by the Ashkenazim, in Hashkafa and Musa, in Hasidis, everything is based on Sisrei Torah. So really, whether we are aware of it or we're not aware of it, of course we have with us, every single Jew today has with him when he keeps Torah and learns Musa and learns Drush, whatever he's learning, he's linked up with the concepts of the Zohar being brought into the world in a way that people can connect up to them and to relate to them. So from here we come really to a situation which we meet up with very often. We said, Baruch Hashem, we're in a generation, there are many Bali Tshuvas. These Bali Tshuvas are really looking for the emes, looking for the truth. Usually when you're looking for the truth, first you meet up with a lot of sheker. So we know so many people like today in Eretz Yisrael, we know that there are hundreds and thousands, I think it's more than 500,000 of Israeli teenagers roaming around in the Far East looking for the truth. They're all there in Goa, in Kathmandu, in all these strange places. They're looking for the truth. They have it in their own backyard, but this they didn't have trouble to look into. Okay, so we know that there are many, many people looking for the truth in all sorts of strange ways, in strange religions, in all sorts of occult practices, even witchcraft, and all sorts of crazy things that people want to attach themselves to anything spiritual. And there is a lot of cheap spirituality available, like in everything. The Zohar always says, whatever is cheap, whatever is for free, is from the Sisra Achra. Whatever is expensive and difficult to attain is from the Kedusha. The Zohar says, to have any hasagas, any a spiritual uplifting, and let's say that a person could feel something spiritual from Sister the Kedusha, from the holy side, he would have to be on a tremendous level. And if he would slip off in the most small way, maybe a small hakpoda of kas, anger, maybe a little of gaiva, he would lose all his spiritual levels immediately. Whereas to link up to spirituality through the channels of impurity, it's very easy. You snap your finger and you're gone. And this is what many people have been through. They've roamed around and they've involved themselves with the occult through all sorts of non-Jewish practices, and sometimes warped and corrupt Jewish practices. And in their own minds, in their own demyonis, they've already tasted spirituality, they've already seen all sorts of strange things by the gurus, all sorts of miracles, all sorts of fantastic things. Most of them are tricks, by the way. And now they're looking in their own backyard, they want to come to learn Torah, they hear the Torah is the source of all religions. So they're looking for yeshiva, maybe if they have mazel, they'll end up in Or Sameach. The first thing, they sat down in front of a daf Gemara. They don't see much spirituality. You have a kasha, you have a teretz, you have a diuk, you have rishonim, you have achronim, you're smashing your brains out. Where's the angels floating around? Everyone's looking for all the quick fix situations to see all the, what they saw by the gurus, all these strange things happening. Once someone visited me, he says, I heard, Rabbi, that you teach Kabala, you learn Kabbalah, but it can't be. I said, why? He says, you're completely normal. In other words, people expect, people have this type of expectation that think that anything abnormal, that's a mekubal, yeah. It must be, strange, different. Unfortunately, that everything has become warped in the minds of people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mizakeh mi. We were zoich to b'shamish g'doilei mikubalim more than 40 years ago. These people were so hidden, so humble, so tznuah. They would never allow themselves to be called Rav, never mind Mekubal. There was no way. If you try to give them any cover to kiss the hands, they would pull the hand away. They were living lives of modesty, hiding themselves. If anyone would get a bracha and then say, Rabbi, your prayers came through, I had a baby, I had a refuah, chas v'shalom, it's not me. Chnufa v'sheker. You're flattering me with lies. You're telling me it's me, who am I? There's a story about the Chafetz Chaim. when he was still quite young, someone came to him crying that he didn't have children. So the Chofetz Chaim gave him a bracha and then said to him, look, I'll give you some secret advice. And go to that village here and there. There's a very old Yid there, very holy Yid. Get a bracha from him. That's Bodukum Nuse, you'll have a baby. He went to the old Yid, got a bracha, and he had a baby. But he told him one condition, you can never reveal that secret. Okay? He kept it secret for maybe 30 years. And then someone very close to him didn't have a child, and he couldn't help, he divulged a secret. He says, look, I was once by the Chofetz Chaim, he sent me to that village, it's an old Yid, maybe he's still alive, maybe you can get a bracha. So the guy went to the village, he got the bracha, and nothing happened. So eventually, this Yid went back to the Chofetz Chaim and said, Rebbe, I was here 40 years ago, you sent me to that village to get a bracha from the Tzadik, and I had a baby. I divulged the secret after many, many years, but it didn't help. So Chofetz Chaim started crying. And someone in the house said to him, you fool. He says, I remember when you came here. When you came here, the Chofetz Chaim took so much to heart your suffering. For 40 days consecutively, he fasted every day from dawn till sunset for you, saying every day Kapitlich Tehillim and crying and weeping for you. He sent you to that old Yid. Okay, that was his camouflage. He didn't anyone want to know that what he was doing. So we see that was how the way of Gedolei Yisrael. It's not a way when people show off their wares and their successes, like you can have it splurge on the pages of newspapers, all the moifsim and all the wonders which some Mekubalim, so-called Mekubalim, are doing. That's not the Derech HaTorah, not the Derech HaChachomim. Anyhow, we come back to our search for the emes. What answer do we have for really Bnei Aliyah, Baalei Tshuva, who want to grow in Torah and want to come close to Hashem? When are they going to feel spirituality? So the answer is, first of all, at any level, wherever we are, we have tremendous siyata d'shmaya. We see it with our own eyes. We see people who are late starters in their lives, and we see how they grew in Torah if they really apply themselves. We can see how they grow in Avodah, and they become such Baalei Midas, they become such Elech Yidden, it's unbelievable. But beyond that, as I said before, we can all avail of ourselves through the Sfarim of Gedolei Yisrael, written in a way, in a more diluted form, which is the way that in this generation is good for us. So if in certain yeshivas they're going to have a shiur in Derech Hashem has all the answers that you're going to look for. It's really a very condensed Eitz Chaim, it's a condensed Zohar HaKodesh. Nefesh HaChaim is the same. Many of the Chassidish Sfarim are the same. So certainly a person who wants to whet his appetite in a controlled way, with eitzes from his Rosh Yeshiva and his Magidei Shiur, when and how, etc., etc. So there are ways that a person can feel that spirituality and can come to know a little bit at least what's beyond the surface, without getting himself involved with Sisrei Torah as they are in the Zohar, the Kisvei Ari, when really a person has to be on a very high level, and more or less the gates are closed for most of us. Maybe we should relate. I understand here we have many of the Talmidim will eventually be serving as Rebbonim in Kelas, working with Kiruv. So of course they're going to come face to face with many situations. So it is important to know certain klolim, how to relate to people, and how to recognize the fake from the true people. I wrote a book, as you know, Faith and Folly. So you have the true people, and you have who you're allowed to have faith in and trust in them, but you have many fakes and charlatans, and you have to know to recognize. At this stage, just to give a very simple definition, I would say that you could say the difference between a Mekubal and a Talmid Chochem is the difference between a stomachache and a headache. It means like this. If someone says, I'm a Talmid Chochem, Talmid Chochem, that means you know Shas and Poskim. Yeah. So that we can check. Let's open up a Daf Gemara, say a Shir. Let's hear how you understand Pshat and Toisves, how do you know, let's see how you are. So a Talmid Chochem can be checked. But a Mikubel, there's no way you can check him. So there's a story. They say if a kid wants to avoid going to school, so he tries his luck. He tells his mom, I have a headache. Oh, that means you have fever. She gets a thermometer. No fever, go to school. So next time he had a better plan. He says, Mom, I have a stomachache. Why? It's hurting, it's aching. No way. She can't prove anything, so he stays at home. So today a person says, I'm a makubal. Prove it. You know, there's no way you can prove it. There's no one around to test him to know what a makubal is. So it's quite a good definition. The great author Or Sameach, in his book Meshech Chochmah, he also gave us a way of finding out. In Seder Shmot, I think, Resh Prashat Bo, he writes in his Sefer, he says, there's two separate ways when a person can become a celebrity and recognized by people as some sort of a tzaddik, a Baal Moifes, etc. He says one way is, for example, I'm adding on, yes, a little bit to make it more understood. Let's say one way would be the way of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish started off life in Vilna, sitting in an attic and learning day and night. No one in the world knew about him. After some years, he was already a Gadol b'Torah. He had written anonymously quite a few of his Sforim. A few Yechidim of the Gedolei Yisrael knew about him. Chaim Oizer Grudinsky had heard about him. Few of the great Rabbonim in Europe already knew that there was such a shining light in the world hidden away in that little attic. Then word got around a little bit, so maybe other Rabbonim got to hear about that there's such a Gadol b'Yisrael. A little bit later, even the Talmidei Yeshivas would say, you know, these writings are from this Gadol. And finally he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he lived the last 10 or 15 years of his life here. There was not a taxi driver or a vegetable manga or anyone who didn't know. And there was some Gadol b'Yisrael in Bnei Brak called the Chazon Ish. Everyone knew that. So that's one way that a person becomes great. He becomes great through his connection, first of all, with the Gedolim, then with the Rabbonim, then with the Bnei Torah. Finally, he goes public. That's one way, that's the reliable way. The other way is you hear of people who start out in the marketplace. Their first fans are Balibatim, who, you know, he impresses them, and there's a lot of noise around him. So the next time he comes to a chasna, they let him sit up in the Mizrach with the Rosh Yeshivas. So slowly but surely, he's becoming famous. When it comes the time for voting, you need Gedolei Yisrael to give opinions. Of course, he's going to be signing with the Gedolim. He's there. Where did he learn? What does he know? No one asks questions. The whole world is speaking about him. He's doing moifsim, he's giving eitzes, he's got, you know, unbelievable things. He's not checked up, but he's already a man de'ama, he's already a Gadol b'Yisrael. So the Meshech Chochmah says, you want to know if a person is a true Gadol, see where he came from. If he grew out of the Oilem Yeshivas, of the Talmidei Chachomim, of the Gedolei Ador, and then he went public, that's a good sign that he's from the Sister HaKedusha. But if his whole growth and fame developed in the streets, leave him there. He's for sure not one of the Gedolei Yisrael. So we have these nisyonis today. There are many charlatans, and in many kehillas, you have these people roaming around who, I mean, the Gemara says, B'chol dor you have, at the time, we had Memches Nevi'im. Today we have a few thousand Nevi'im, if my lists are up to date. Every other guy knows the future. He can tell you, you're going to have a boy, you're going to have a girl, you're going to make money, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And people believe it. Unfortunately, that when people have a problem, they're going to grab onto anything to save themselves. Anything. Anyone who gives them any hope, they're going to grab. So they're not checking out what they're doing. And really, unfortunately, people go through a lot of suffering because of this. We don't have all the answers. Sometimes some of these people, it seems, have some sort of koyach, of intuition. They can be quite prophetic, impressively. They can know hidden things. So sometimes I've checked it out and I found out they have a very good organization of information, of gleaning information. Before they come to a town, they've already had their feelers out, and they heard about Mr. So-and-so and Mr. So-and-so. This one is just divorcing his wife, and this one just, his son was run over, and this one is lost a lot of money, and this one has some sort of an illness, and this one made a lot of money, and this one has all sorts of things. And when he comes along, he's already a prophet, he knows everything. But others really have this type of a koyach, they can say things. We're not impressed by that. We have to be only impressed by one thing. Open up a Daf Gemara and see if he knows to understand Pshat and Tosfos. If he knows how to learn, maybe we'll consider checking his other points. A person doesn't know how to learn, Baruch Hu is not yet bankrupt. He's not going to throw his Ruach HaKodesh, on every bur ve'am haaretz that he's looking for, just splurge it on him. There are Gdolei Israel. There are Tznuim by Gdolei Israel. There are really some Gdolim, hardly anyone knows about them. All their lives, they're Yagea b'toira ve'avoida, secretly sitting ba'arba amma shel halacha, day and night, and learning with no publicity, with no personal benefit or cover or anything. These are the emes of Gdolei Israel. The Ramchal says something quite shocking in Derech Hashem. He says sometimes a person is an Oved Hashem. He's mechaven l'shem shamayim. He keeps mitzvahs and he learns Torah. And he's working hard, but he didn't work hard enough. He didn't get to the spitz of his potential. He didn't get to the height of what he could have achieved. HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes him by giving him koiches to be mateh him. Have you heard of such a thing? So this guy is all of a sudden going to become like psychic, and he's at koiches. He comes, he sees things, he hears things, he knows things. He thinks he's achieved the levels of, who knows who, one of the Nevi'im, Yeshaya or Yirmiyahu. But the emes is Hashem is bringing it upon him as a nisoyim. The Bnei Soscha, one of the great Rebbes, famous author of the Sefer Bnei Soscha and others for him, Admor Medunev his name was. He once said that when he passed the age of 40, doubts left him that his koiches were not from the Sisra Achra, that they were really from Sisra the Kedusha. Then he was beginning to believe that maybe he is really zoiche to his Hatzlocha and Torah and Hatzlocha and other things from the Sisra the Kedusha. Other Hasidim tell a story, and it's a true story. They even know the name of the Rebbe. I'm not aware of it, but they know it's a true story. There was once a Rebbe, a very great Rebbe, Bal Moifes. His brachas were mekuyim, his davening was always coming, his eitzes were unbelievable. Everyone felt Ruach HaKodesh. One of his Hasidim was always very poor, and as many brachas that he got, it never helped. One day he went to the market, ala Yerid, it's called the Yerid, and on the way he went through a forest. Passing through, he met an old man, and the man called him and says, "Look, I know you want to become rich, you want to be successful, I'm giving you this dime. Start off the business, the next business do with this dime, you'll become a multi-millionaire." So he took the dime, he went, started business, he bought, sold, he came back a multi-millionaire. He came back to his Rebbe, he gave him a big donation. The Rebbe said, "What happened? How did you make it?" So he told him the story. So the Rebbe said to him, he says, "Look, that man you met in the forest was from the Sisra Achra. All your wealth that came through him, you've literally sold yourself to the Sultan. You have to go back and beg of him and cry that he takes it back. Every penny, give it all back." Okay? So he went back into the forest. He wouldn't leave it. The man didn't appear to him. He was crying and screaming. Eventually he appeared to him and he said, "Please take it all back here, every penny." He said, no, no way, I'm not taking it back. You're mine now. You're one of the gang. He says, no, I beg of you, please. Okay, he says, I'll make a deal with you. I'll take it back on one condition. If you go back to your Rebbe and you tell him that all his koiches and hatzlocha as a Baal Moifes is also from me. The same makor as you is your Rebbe. Okay, he made a deal, he went back to the Rebbe heard it, he says, Ois Rebbe. He took off his fur coats and he went begolis, like chaper avoinoi, and no one heard of him. He went mamish. He became completely secretive and no one heard of him ever again. So in other words, we should not be impressed by when we see someone who is seemingly knowing hidden things. It doesn't even interest us. If you are interested, I could take you here to Shar Shechem, introduce you to a few Arabs who do the same thing. They can do it with a cup of tea, they can do it with a cup of coffee, they can do it all sorts of ways. There are these type of things. It exists. So that's not what impresses us. What impresses us is someone like Rabbi Yosef, Hashem Yarich Yamav, his son-in-law, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Yidden who sit and learn Torah, Betara, V'Kedusha, who really, we don't see, we see, but we don't see so much of their miracles, of their, on the street corners, the charlatans are doing much bigger miracles than they ever did. So I get a call from, let's say, one of the cities in, could be America, North America, South America, so-and-so is coming, this Rav. He wants to come, we should invite him in the yeshiva, we should invite him in the kehillah, he wants to speak. What should we do? I say, no way. He'll destroy everything. I mean, you're going to lose the whole ha'arocha. What's a Gadol B'Yisrael? What's sheker? You can't bring him in. Yeah, but he knows mamish everything. Everything. He knows the future, he knows the past. Unbelievable. So I said to them, okay, if he's so insisted, he can come. Invite him to the koilel. He should say a shur. What you learn in Yivomes? Okay, let him say a shur in Yivomes. Of course, he doesn't come. He's willing to say a few droshes here and there, but Yivomes he's not heard about. Sometimes they're more insistent. But Rabbi, he wants to come. What can we do? We can't fight with him. So I say, where do your children learn? They say, what do you mean? In Talmud Torah, in Yeshiva Ktana, Yeshiva Gdoila, in Koilelim, in Beis Yankev. I said, take them out quick. What do you mean? How could you say such a thing? Take them out. Look, Hazal say, 1,000 nichnasim lebes hamedrash, ve'ahad yoytze moire haroah. 1,000 students have to go into yeshiva for one to come out a poisek. For one to come out like Rabbi Yosef or like Rosh Yeshiva, like Rab Shach, you need maybe 5 million to go into the Beis HaMedrash. Maybe one of 5 million will come out a gadol like Rab Shach or Rabbi Yosef. But on the other hand, and what have they done? Nothing. What did Rab Shach do all his life? Nothing. Sacha called the Rosh Yeshiva of Ponevezh. He taught maybe a few 100,000 of Talmidim. I'm one of them. He wrote his foreign, his Marbitz Torah, but he did nothing. He didn't see, angels zooming around him and moifsim, and he didn't see any of that. Everything was very normal. Whereas these people who don't learn in yeshivas, you see, moifsim, and they know everything, the secrets, everything. So I tell them, take your kids out of yeshiva. They'll become a prophet. Leave them in yeshiva. If they're 1 in a million, they're going to be a Talmid Chacham. So why you put them in yeshivas? Take them out. Then they begin a little bit to understand what I'm talking about and how stupid they are. They were not meant to be impressed by this. There's nothing to impress us. The Gemara asks, why does Avodah Zarah have success? That means people would go to priests of idol worshippers, and whatever they did, they sprinkle water or give them a red string, whatever they do. And they had Yeshuas. So why does it work? The Gemara answers as an Nisoyan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us freedom of choice. He shows us that the other side is rosier. Look what's happening, look what's taking place. Of course, those people who have been in the Far East and seen these gurus in action, they can tell you, what you see there, you get with all the Gedolei Yisrael together, you're not going to see it. You're going to see a few old men discussing a halacha. That's what you're going to see. No more. Whereas in those countries, you see all sorts of unbelievable, fantastic things miracles happen. The Zohar says, from the Sisra Akhra, it's like that. You link up to the occult, you're zooming and flying in 1 minute. You don't need any preparations, you don't need Kedusha, you don't need Tahara, you don't need Chokhmah, nothing. Bilam achieved all his higher madregas on the level of Moshe through Koiches Tumah. He had a relationship with his mule. Not nice to say, but Hazal said. So the derech of the tumah is also, it works in such ways that Adarabah, people do sins and they get madregas of hasogas in the derech hatumah. Whereas in the derech kedusha, it doesn't work like that. So what's very important is that we know how to assess correctly Gedolei Torah. So everyone said, okay, but maybe he's a tzaddik mister. Why? They see a guy coming along. He doesn't even look like a yeshiva boy, but he's a miracle worker. Just mentioning miracle workers, I want to tell you a true story which took place maybe 10 years ago in Monsey, New York. There was a Rebbe there, Mamash Abal Moifas. He became famous in a few years, and every brocha came through. But then there were some very not pleasant rumors about him that he wasn't behaving nicely with women. So all the Askonim and the Rabbonim and the Moira Haros of different Kehilas went to deal with the situation. So a friend of mine met up with one of the Choshev Rabbonim who dealt with the case. I said, "No, what happened with the Rebbe? Is he still opening shop? Is the clinic still open?" He says, "We solved the problem." How did you solve the problem? He says, "Look, we made mamash, there's a poster outside that no woman is allowed to come in on her home. She can only come in accompanied by a man. And we'd made so many takonas that no problems can happen." So he said, "That's a takona? Why don't you just throw them out?" He says, "No, we need poile Yeshuas. We need miracle makers." So you see what's happened in the mind of people have become so stupid, there's no other word, stupid, that they don't know that there's no such thing as Hashrosh Shechina and Siyata Deshmaya by a person who's even got an inkling, a nikuda of gaiva, he'll lose Ruach HaKodesh. If he's got any negia, if he's doing it for money, if he can't have koiches from the Sister Akdush. There's no way, impossible. But people don't know, they don't realize what's going on. And they're very easily tempted to make these mistakes. Now the most important thing is the chinuch, our own chinuch, the chinuch of our children, of our kehilas. How are we going to bring up our talmidim? How do we develop them? How do we educate them? Ma ya'aseh ben velo yaheta. What's going to be if we find in all sorts of places cover being given to people she'enam lo b'mikra velo b'mishnah ma'amesh burim v'amei haaretz, and they write a goin, a tzaddik, a mekubel. What's going on? Today, for example, I met up a few days ago with one of the main photographers who takes all the pictures for all the newspapers today. As we know, they all have pages and pages of pictures of Gdolei Yisrael. So I said, you know what responsibility you have? Today, more than anyone else, you're building up world opinion, PR, public relations for whole of Klal Yisrael and for the future as well. Who is a Talmid Chacham, who's not a Talmid? Who is a Gadol, who's a Tzaddik, who's not a Tzaddik? And that's a big responsibility, that people are being blown out of proportion with no way. So someone called up one of the Vadeh, you have today all these of Kupat Ha'ir and Vadeh HaTzedakah, and they use pictures. So still by the Ashkenazi Gedolim, it's more or less controlled. You're going to have Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Steinman, you're going to have Chaim Kanievsky, more or less, more or less controlled. But by the Sfardim, it's not at all controlled. So someone called up and said, how do you put this guy in and you label him as a Mekubal, as a godly? He didn't open a Gemara the last 30 years. So he said, look, every Psichas Magbit he gives us $100,000. Isn't it worth it? Okay, that's a true story. What I'm trying to say is, we can't trust anything. Today we don't know who's in charge. Who's in charge? We don't know who's deciding. And it's dangerous that people can be led astray. The charbonas which come of it. Every day I get phone calls from kehillas all over the world, and as much and more so from Eretz Israel, of people whose lives have been manipulated and destroyed by these type of charlatans who lead them astray with all sorts of shtusim v'havolim. So of course it's a big nisayon, and it's very important at least that Bnei Torah, those who sit down in a yeshiva, learn Torah in yeshiva, that they've seen what it is to learn a daf Gemara, they've heard shiurim from Rabbonim who showed them what Yegiyas Torah is, how you come to a level of learning, and only through that you can maybe see a little bit of the small print and know some of the secrets of the Torah. At least then we'll know that this whole concept of tzaddik nista, people think, tzaddik nista, what's a tzaddik nista? So they make it easy for themselves. They see a guy, dressed, dressed like nothing. Not like a Rav. Behaving, not like a Rav. Eating, like a behemoth. Nothing. But they say, but he's a Baal Moifes and he's a tzaddik nista. This is all his camouflage. He's pretending that he's nothing, but really he's mamish and godly. If people ask me, do I know a tzaddik nista? Yeah, I knew a tzaddik nista for sure. One of them that I knew very well was a Steipler. The Gaon Steipler was a tzaddik nista. Why was he a tzaddik nista? Because what we know about him, and there are many big heavy books which have told us a lot about him, and we saw with our own eyes what he was, that was maybe 1% of what he really was. He hid everything. The Gedolei Israel don't show off what they have. They live a life of tznius, of hiding themselves. That's a tzaddik nista. That means most of his actions and his deeds and his dargas is all hidden. What we see is a little efes katzehu tere, a little pinpoint of his gdula. That's a tzaddik nista. Tzaddik nista doesn't mean someone who walks around the street doing narishkaiting, behaving like a Michiganer, and then say, no, but in Chedrich Hadorim is a tzaddik. That's not a tzaddik nista. Tzaddik nista is someone who you don't see him any fault. He is perfect. Perfect in his Torah, perfect in his avodah, perfect in every single, in his hashkafa, more so. Hashkafa is even more important. Then maybe, beyond all of that, you could say, he has koiches, he's a tzaddik nista. Whatever we knew and we saw by the Steipler, Mamish, Nissim and Niflos, we see, B'Yibadeh L'chaim Tovim by his son, Reb Chaim, we see Nissim and Niflos, Mamish Ruach HaKodesh you see by them. We have no questions. Someone who sits and learns Torah day and night, the way they learned, Mamish, Beramach Avorim, Meshas Agidim, the whole of Olam Hazeh for their Torah. So they're on such a spiritual level, of course they can get to have koiches, that Hashem will guide them and give them at least Ruach HaKodesh to help people make the right decisions. Quite often their decisions are not even seichel dik, and you see there that it's not just logic or, I give people advice, very logical, yeah, that's right, makes sense. They say things sometimes doesn't even make sense, but they're right, because they're seeing beyond the human mind. They have some level of Ruach HaKodesh, but that can only be by Gdolei Yisrael and Kedoshei Elyon, people who are living a holy life, a life b'kedusha. So we should never be led astray and be very careful, because these things are very important. These are Yisoidei HaYisoides. It's who's going to make the decisions in the future for Klal Yisrael. Who are the Gdolim who are going to lead Klal Yisrael? Who are the Gdolim who are going to give opinions of how one is meant to learn, how yeshivas should be developed? What's the shittas halimud? What's the shittas avoida? How do you keep things? How do you do? What's the right proportion between this and this? If you don't have proper anhoga, and if people are going to get hold of the reins who are not on the right level, but today the mass media can build them up into tzadikim and goyonim and all sorts of things, we're in big danger. Klal Yisrael has in big danger. So it's very important that together with your learning in yeshiva, you grow yourselves in Torah, and you also grow in your appreciation of the emes hagedolim, to know what the truth is. And then Hashem will mezakeas, a person will, It says, Haba letaher mesay'in lo. Someone who comes forward to work hard, to improve, Hashem will help him. Hashem will help you grow, will help you develop in Torah and grow from level to level, to know Torah in all its halakim, to be gdoilei Torah. Why not? Torah munachat bekeren zavit. Anyone who wants to be zoiche, be a masmid, work hard, you'll get there. Hashem yizakeh etchem lilmod, lamed, lishmor, la'asod, le'gdil Torah v'la'adira.